There's no motherly instinct for him, not even from his real parents. So they have two foster parents with a weird story taking an unplanned trip to grandma's, a dad driving off to go allegedly do work on, I think, a Saturday, 4 hours from where he lives. Did anyone ever sit these parents down and question them separately? That's what I want to know. Or has it been this way since day one, where they had a little board on the wall with the word abducted on it to prime everybody to assume that that is what actually happened? There's no evidence of an abduction. What actually happened to William Tyrrell? I'm Deception Detective. I'm an attorney trained in statement analysis, and this channel exists to expose lies and manipulation. Before we proceed, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. In today's video, we're going to analyze a segment of an interview with William's foster parents. This is the second video in my brand new William Tyrrell series, and the second video about this particular interview. In the last video, we began formulating a hypothesis of what happened to William based on the parents' account of the day, which I'll go over. In today's video, we're seeking to refine our theory further with an open mind that it could be disproved. With that said, let's start listening.
Vanished.
We've literally got a situation where a child has disappeared, and as if it was just plucked, or William was just plucked from the air.
I couldn't see him. I couldn't hear him. It was the world, it's like the world just came to a screaming halt. There was no wind.
All right, so we left off about a minute further into the interview, but I wanted to start here just to bring everybody to the table. So if this is the first video you're seeing in your feed and you haven't watched the one that came before this, we've come up with 4 theories based on what I saw in the parents' language in part 1, as well as what I've seen in the comments on that video. So even though I didn't reply to every comment, I do try to read every comment. And essentially we have 4 theories. And I just posted these on X for people to vote on. The theories come down to foul play at grandma's house and a cover-up. So the parents did something deliberately or in a heat of passion to William, and then they covered it up with this abduction story. Or there was an accident at grandma's house. For example, we saw that William's mother talked about putting him up in a tree and him not wanting to climb up there. She also said he jumped off the porch, so she was talking about him jumping. And then here, what I think might be leakage, and I pointed this out in the first video, was her saying the world came to a screaming halt when the actual phrase is a screeching halt. And this isn't the first time we've seen her talk about screaming and screeching and loud noises, which may imply that she has a memory of William screaming in pain, or screaming as he was falling, or screaming in fear, or shouting when she imagines that day, the day he allegedly disappeared. There is also another weird thing about their story where they took the children out of school, their foster children, one of whom was William, out of school early and drove to grandma's house, to one of their parents' house. I think like on a Friday or a Thursday, right? So an odd time to go. And they made a big point of saying that William was at breakfast the next morning, which I pointed out in the previous video is odd given the circumstances. So the entire trip to grandma's itself could have been the cover-up, which implies that something happened to William before they even took the trip. And then finally, the theory that the parents are pushing, the theory that the police seem to believe in this video, is that William was actually abducted. And based on what I've seen so far in this story, I do not think that's the case. The story they're telling about that day has multiple signs of deceptions, deception as well as signs of scripting. I'm not going to belabor and review all that here, but if you watch the previous video, I point out multiple examples of all that. Now let's keep those 4 theories in mind and see which one stands out more as we watch this next segment of the interview. And as always, I have not watched this before myself.
There were no birds, there was no movement, there was nothing. And I'm looking out around this garden, I'm thinking, where are you? And I've just said, William, where are you? You need to talk to me, I can't see you. Where are you? And there was nothing.
Detective Gary Jublin retraces William's last steps.
We jumped down here.
Yes, that's right.
After that,
After that, headed off around in this direction, around the corner of the house. The mother still heard, she heard him say raw, again in keeping with the game that he was playing at the time.
and that we think is around about here.
The other reason I started this segment here, right, so about a minute behind where we should actually pick up, is so you can see how convinced this police officer is of the abduction story. So he's saying he jumped off here, the mother could hear him, instead of saying the mother says he jumped off here or allegedly he jumped off here and ran around the corner. This Australian detective seems to be very unskeptical of the story. And that irked me in the first video. And I hopefully will see some other officer involved or something, someone who's going to question the story a little bit more in this documentary. But this is the head investigator.
Out here.
Yeah, this general area, because it was out of sight and she heard it, and that was the last time she heard William.
Detective Jublin believes William wanders down the slope towards the tree where he'd been playing with his mother just an hour before.
I'm looking here and thinking, well, the child's not going to wander up into the bush.
It's a steep hill.
It's a steep hill,
Yes.
It's thick bush, it's scary. For a 3-year-old child, it's scary. There's a fence line there. I can't see him going through the fence line. I can see a child wandering off down the slope.
At the time, William was excitedly waiting for his father to return. He and his 4-year-old sister would often make a game of it.
They always run to the gate normally at home and they're looking out for me and my car.
And I
or they can
remember
hear it.
saying, can you see Daddy's car? And there was no answer. There was no answer.
This is something we noticed in the first part. The mother uses the incorrect tone, which is a sign of a made-up story, right? A sign of a plot hole in the story. It's hard to put yourself in the shoes of something that happened, something that didn't happen, and speak as if it did. So, for example, when she talked about shouting for William, she didn't say she was shouting. She said, I said, William, where are you? William, I can't see you. That's what I said. When in reality, if your kid was actually missing and you actually believe they were abducted, as they say they do, you would use a much stronger word, right? I shouted, I yelled, I screamed, William, where are you? Now she says, I actually said, William, do you see Daddy? If she couldn't see him and he might be down that hill on the road where his dad's car would be, you don't say that, you shout it, right? I shouted, William, do you see Dad? Is that why you're down there? I screamed, William, are you with Dad? Where are you? So just keep track of the tone. This is one way to catch liars, that they use soft tone when in reality they should be using hard tone. And we see multiple examples of this, right? It's not just saying said versus yelled, but sometimes people, like Nadia, when she said that someone called the police to her house and put her in danger, she said, right, this person called the police, or someone called the police. You would expect them to say, this jerk called the police and sent someone to my house, or that crazy guy called the police and almost got me killed. So the tone they use about the potential attacker can also be soft, Whereas if something actually happened, they don't use soft tone like that.
And then I raced back around and I said to Mum, he's not there, he's gone. And she said, what do you mean he's gone? And I said, he's disappeared, he's not there.
Again, I said. She didn't scream once, she didn't shout once, she didn't yell once. As always, these are just things I'm pointing out. They are cumulative, so the more signs of deception you see, each one should be like a poker chip. And once you've stacked up enough chips that you feel comfortable to go all in, only then should you say, hey, this person's probably lying. So just because we see 1 or 2 signs of deception does not mean someone's lying. Some people just talk that way. But we need to point it out, especially when we're trying to catch a liar on the fly, because you need to be making a mental tabulation of every sign of deception as you're listening.
I just kept racing around the house going, where are you? You've talked to me. Where are you? And I couldn't see him. And I couldn't hear him. And I just didn't know where he was.
All right, so I couldn't. So all that voice trembling and crying, you need to block that out, because that is how you can get manipulated. What we're looking for is a match between the displayed emotions, so her crying and, and being very dramatic and huffing and puffing. So those are displayed emotions, but also reported emotions. So notice how she's very dramatic here and very persuasive that she's sad. But when she reports what she did, I said this, I said that, right? She doesn't tell us she screamed once or shouted once or yelled. Where was all that emotion in her story? And once again, that's because it's easier to act. It's easier to fake body language. Acting is easier than writing the script. Writing a script is very hard. Even blockbuster movies have plot holes because fabricating an airtight story is virtually impossible. So if you're going to catch someone lying, particularly a sophisticated liar, it's going to be with their words, not with their body language or trying to gauge subjectively how sad they are. I don't care if she cries or if she's stoic like the McCanns. It doesn't factor into my analysis, and it shouldn't factor into yours. But I feel like those police on this case did factor that in far too much. Because the officer on this case seems to have bought their story hook, line, and sinker. And that is a particularly irksome thing about this case. And after I did part 1, I saw lots of comments of people saying, hey, Dee, you seem to be particularly invested in this story. Or, you seem to be a little bit more judgmental in this story or upset. And I thought about that because I don't have a dog in the fight of any of these cases, right? These cases are simply a way for us to explore deception techniques. We're not trying to solve the crime. But I thought about that, and here's what I came up with, so I'll just address that quickly. So here's what I posted on X. If you don't follow me there, I recommend following me there as well. And I said, why did the William Tyrrell case strike a chord with me? Likely because he was let down by every adult in his life, from his biological parents to his foster parents and even the police. And then I posted this video of the still face experiment. So I said, if you're wondering about the impact of a caring mother on a child, watch this. And it's based on an experiment that was done where a baby's mother doesn't react to him and keeps a still face. And this can actually lead to, it can lead to repairable socialization for a short period of time, but a prolonged circumstance of this can actually lead to irreversible damage with the kid. And I think it pains me to think that if something happened to William under the care of these foster parents, that he died surrounded by people who couldn't care less about him. And the police seem to also be dropping the ball. Let's keep listening.
By now, William's dad arrives home. Distraught, he is joined by neighbours in the search. Both parents know their cautious boy just wouldn't wander off.
I thought I won't call the police straight away just in case he's next door or
He turns up.
or he just turns up.
You just could never have imagined that he'd be taken.
I didn't expect any of this to happen. I expected him to be back. I phoned the police or the 000 number, and I just think to myself, keep it together, keep it together, keep it together, keep it together. Because it was just becoming so real that we had no idea where he was.
It was becoming so real. That's a strange choice of words. Does this mean she's lying? Does this mean that they actually cooked up a fake story and now it's starting to feel real? That's possible. So when people use phrases or colloquialisms, I saw lots of comments like this. Well, that's just what we say in Australia, or that's what we say in America, or that's a common phrase. I understand that. I agree with you 100%. The colloquialisms people use in these videos, whether it's the McCanns or the Ramseys or the Wells or William Tyrrell's foster parents, of course they're common. But there's multiple ways to say things. And the fact that someone picks a particular way to say it could be an example of leakage. So we have to point it out because leakage is cumulative. For example, when she talks about William, the world coming to a screaming halt, and then the last thing she heard of William was him saying, "Ah!" Those are two instances of her thinking about screaming when she's talking about the moments when William allegedly disappeared. And we have to ask ourselves, why is that? Why in the milliseconds she has to come up with a sentence, to pick her words and say them to us, are words like screaming and sounds of shouting coming to her mind? It could be totally benign, but it could also be leakage where her memory is leaking through her words. Right? Memory is stronger than imagination. And it would not be the first time that someone revealed themselves with leakage. So I point out many examples where the leakage was recognized retroactively, right? Where a parent used a word like, "I'm drained," and then the kid was found in a storm drain. Or the parent said, or Chris Watts said, at any moment I expect my children to come barreling in. I expect them to come barreling in through the door. And then it was revealed that he killed his children, and stuffed them into barrels and buried them. So I'm pointing it out here, right? It's not a smoking gun that she says this was becoming real. But it is an odd phrase to use. It could be that she knows the story's fake, and right before the call, she told herself, keep it together. You have to sound sad, remember your script, and make it real. Or it could just be, hey, he was actually kidnapped. We're in disbelief. And it's starting to dawn on me that this is a real situation. I'm calling the police. Right. So I'm entertaining both options.
So I phone and I just say, my child's missing.
Coming up.
Missing 3.5-year-old. Been missing since 10:30.
Their worst fears are realised.
Somebody has taken William.
If he was missing, we'd have found him by now.
Inside the investigation.
Bill Spedding has been identified publicly. He's been spoken to by investigators. It's known that he had been to the grandmother's house to service a washing machine. There are questions about his alibi. Is Bill Spedding a person of interest in this case?
That's next on 60 Minutes.
It's the morning of Friday, September the 12th, 2014. Little William, just 3 years old, has been playing in the backyard of his grandmother's home on the New South Wales mid-north coast. He wanders around the side of the house, nothing unusual. But a few minutes later, when his mum goes looking for him, William is nowhere to be seen. She searches, getting more worried by the second. And with no sign of William, she rings 000.
Yeah, hi.
All right, so now we have an emergency phone call. If you followed my channel for a while, you'll know that there's certain things we look for in emergency phone calls to gauge for ourselves whether or not we believe it's an actual emergency. So I'm going to show you that list. Let me pull it up here. If you're a channel member, you can find this list in the members section. And this is the FBI's COPS list, which is an empirical results of empirical studies of real emergency calls that were either clearly determined to be genuine and staged. Right, so real ones and fake ones where the guilty person was making the call. And the FBI came up with 11 criteria to look for. So just because something might have one, check mark in the guilty side or, a couple on the innocent side, doesn't mean that the caller is innocent or guilty. However, we like to see as many check marks as possible on the innocent caller side if we are going to bet our reputation, money, or benefit of the doubt on someone being innocent. So I never believe that someone should be put in prison or locked away based on anything I say here. However, you should use these skills in your own life if you're trying to make more correct decisions than wrong ones, or escape more manipulations and scams and frauds, or just bad people to be around. You should use these skills to detect when someone's manipulating you or lying to you. When it comes to locking people up, I do believe it should be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. All right, all that said, innocent callers typically do these things, right? So we'll just go through this quickly. Innocent callers request help for the victim. They provide relevant information. They show concern for the victim, and they correct facts. So if they're standing far away from someone and they say, hey, a man has been shot, and then they get closer, they say, oh, actually, it's a woman, right? So they correct themselves, which is a nice sign that the story's not scripted. Because a scripted story is perfect from square one. The person's already planned what they're going to say. All right, the other things they do is they request help for the victim. They focus on the victim's survival, and they do not accept the victim's death. So especially a mother and a child. If a mother sees her kid and the police, laying on the bed, not moving, the police say, hey, go take his pulse. Is there a pulse? Sometimes what mothers might do, even in that situation, is say, he has no pulse. Get over here now. Right? So even when they're aware that the kid doesn't have a pulse, they still can't process that it means the kid's dead. They still hold out hope that they can be revived, right? They do not accept the victim's death. All right, then FBI looks at voice modulation. I prefer not to look at that, so we're going to ignore it. The final three things are probably the most important. Innocent callers are urgent and almost rude. In fact, they are rude. So urgently and rudely demanding. Get here now. Help me now. Find my kid. My kid's missing. Right? They don't say, hello, officer. Thank you for taking my call. A small bother here. My kid has gone missing. Can you please help? Right? Anything like that shows that the person's not in a primal emergency state of mind. So even if you're the most polite person in the world, in an emergency, you would be surprised just how primal you become. Any extra word goes out the window. In fact, emergency callers often use contractions. So they don't even say, do not pull up to the gate, come straight to the house. They say, don't pull up to the gate. Right? So they use contractions. Next, innocent callers are cooperative with the dispatcher. So if the dispatcher asks them something, they do their best to answer it, even if it's a guess. And then there's no self-interruption. So they don't start saying something and then change to something else. That's a big sign of self-editing. It's a good sign that someone is trying to conceal something. They're not being totally candid. And then if you're also a member, as you know, I posted this video, this entire documentary in the members section 3 weeks ago, and lots of you did this analysis on this emergency call that we're about to analyze. So let's see if your analysis matches up with mine. Here we go. Let's start it from the top.
With no sign of William, she rings 000.
Yeah, hi, my son is missing.
Yeah, hi. A greeting is not what we expect to see in an emergency call. Does this mean she's lying? No. However, it's a small, it actually ticks this box here against politeness. So here we have guilty callers, polite and patient. And of course, members of the channel caught that, right? Polite to the 911 operator, says hi, and then my son is missing. Why say hi? Exactly. All right, so we have a greeting. Yeah, hi, my son is missing.
He's 3.5. Sorry?
Your address.
Sorry, more politeness. Casey Anthony also said, sorry, when speaking with the dispatchers. Not only is that politeness, but it could even be leakage. Someone apologizing. They know they've done something bad, or they know they're lying to the police, and they cannot help but apologize, but say sorry. Does someone saying sorry mean that it's leakage, mean they're guilty? Of course not. Right? I'm aware when people don't hear something, they might say sorry, please repeat. So believe me, when I point out something, I'm aware that lots of people say it. I'm pointing it out though in case it's leakage, in case we see her say sorry a bunch of times, or I apologize, I couldn't hear you, right? That would be even more bizarre.
48 Centeroon Drive, Kendall.
How long has he been missing?
I think we've been looking for him now for about 15 or 20 minutes. But
all right, so we've been looking for him now for about 15 or 20 minutes. All right, so 15 or 20 minutes have gone by. This is something that we saw. I think what we're seeing here is something we saw in another 911 call we looked at. So if you're not aware, I have an actual playlist of analyzing 911 calls. And one of the calls we've analyzed is the John Benet Ramsey 911 call and the Michael Peterson, the staircase 911 call. And I think we're seeing a similarity to the Michael Peterson case here, where he was very fluid with the questions that he expected, right? So for example, what's your address? What happened? Where were you? But when he was asked an unexpected question, something he didn't have time to prepare for, or he just didn't have the imagination to imagine that the police would ask that question, he stumbled and repeated himself and stuttered, just like we saw William's foster mother do here. So in the Michael Peterson case, they asked him, about how many stairs did your wife fall down? An unanticipated question. And he stuttered and stumbled over himself. And that seems to be what's happening here. She might not have expected them to ask, how long has he been missing?
But I thought it could be 5, it could be longer, because he was just playing around here. We heard him, and then we heard nothing.
Uh-oh. All right, now we're getting in. I know I'm pausing a lot, but that's because this is a very, very bad emergency call. Now we're getting into the territory of a hoaxer. So listen to that part again.
I think, we've been looking for him now for about 15 or 20 minutes, but I thought it could be 5, it could be longer, because he was just playing around here. We heard him, and then we heard nothing.
He was just playing around here. We heard him, and then we heard nothing. what's going on here is a lot of extraneous information, extra information. This is one of the big signs of a guilty caller. So guilty callers, when they call the police, they have an objective. They need to get the police there. They know they're being recorded, and they need to establish their alibi. So not only do they have to call the police, but they want to get their alibi on the record, right? He was playing around. I didn't see him. He just disappeared. That's not what she was asked. In a real emergency, I would expect a mother to say, my kid's been missing. He disappeared 20 minutes ago. Not start offering more evidence of what happened or what her theories are. The other issue here is that it seems like ingratiation, where she's trying to prove to the police and get it on the record that she's a great mother, right? He was just playing around. He was enjoying himself. And then I heard nothing, right? I'm a very attentive mother. I as soon as I heard it, might have been even been 5 minutes, not 15. I had to call the police. All right, so already in the guilty caller column, if you're listening on podcast mode, you can't see this checklist, so I'll just read it quickly. Guilty callers. This might be the more important one to read right now, so you can keep these in mind as we continue listening. Guilty callers typically do these things, right? And just because they do one or two of these things does not mean they're guilty. But if we see a bunch of check marks in the guilty caller side, then we need to be very, very skeptical of everything else the parents say. All right, so guilty callers. No request for help for the victim. So they don't request help. Has she requested help yet? No. Extraneous information. She has provided extraneous information. The police did not ask, what was he doing when he went missing? They insult or blame the victim, and they give conflicting facts. So instead of updating, correcting their facts, the facts they give actually contradict each other. Guilty callers, they request help for themselves, not the victim. So if she says, come help me, or come help us, that's a red flag, instead of saying, help find my son. Guilty callers focus on the caller's problem, not the victim's. And guilty callers accept the victim's death. Guilty callers are polite and patient, they resist cooperation, and they self-interrupt. And if you're a member, you can see my extra notes here where I actually point out which ones of these on the checklist are the most important to look for.
I said right at the beginning, somebody has taken William, was absolutely screaming at me.
All right, then here's another red flag, a sign of a hoax. There's no evidence that anyone was on the property, just like the McCanns. There's no evidence of an abductor. It's not like there were muddy footprints leading up to where he last was, or a ransom note. So when people are conclusive in spite of the evidence, you need to be on alert that you may be getting hoaxed, that they have a narrative they want to push. Innocent parents, actual innocent parents, entertain all options, including abduction. So if you've seen my video, What Do Innocent Parents Look Like?, you'll see the difference between hoaxing parents, in my opinion, the McCanns, and actual innocent parents who say he might have wandered off, that he might have followed the dogs down the hill, he might have been abducted, he might be hiding under the porch. We don't know, but we need help finding our son. That's how actual innocent parents speak. Just like how I don't actually know what happened. Notice how much I say, this might have happened, I think this happened, because I don't know. I'm not sitting here saying they killed him or, they're responsible, right? Even my poll has 4 options still, one of which is an actual stranger abduction. That's how people who don't actually know what happened speak. Because I don't know what happened. But the fact that they're so conclusive that he was kidnapped means that they do know what happened, in my opinion, right? Or they want to push you in a certain direction. So the fact they're so conclusive in spite of the evidence is a sign of a hoax.
Section 18, cars in the vicinity. Missing 3.5-year-old. Been missing since 10:30.
Senior Constable Chris Rowley is just 4 kilometres away when the call goes out to all local police cars. He lives in Kendall, has 3 children of his own, and knows Benaroon Drive well.
What's your first encounter when you arrive in the neighbourhood?
When I turned into Benaroon Drive, I ran into Mum in the street. She was obviously out searching. She was obviously upset.
So notice she was upset. She was probably crying, but she didn't tell us she was screaming or shouting when she was looking for William. People get fooled by displayed emotions because those are easy to fake. Psychopaths are great at faking emotions. But even psychopaths, just like everyone else, is really bad at writing the script of a fake story. That's why we need to listen to the words. She can cry all she wants. She could be sitting there stoically like a rock. It wouldn't affect my analysis. I'm listening to what she's saying.
The first officer on the scene, Chris gets the family back to the house to search the place inside out, just in case William is hiding. It's here he meets his dad.
Yeah, he was a mess. You could just tell he was distraught.
When you're a father, what do you say to another father?
I just touched him on the shoulder. I said, mate, we won't stop. Okay, I'll be here tomorrow. There'll be more of us. It'll get bigger and bigger, and we'll keep looking.
It did get a lot bigger. By the end of the day, 200 police, SES and locals were searching for William. As night passes, Vanessa Partridge is the first detective sent to Benaroon Drive. Also,
all right, this is what I said I was hoping for. A detective who can actually see clearly. Even if we just go based on statistics on Occam's razor, if something happens to a 3-year-old kid, 99% of the time, the parents were involved. 3-year-old kids don't know that many adults in their life. The parents, the majority of the time, are responsible. So even if we're just going based on not knowing anything about the case, the parents should be sequestered, separated, and interrogated. Their stories need to be told, and we need to see if there's contradictions. I want to know what grandma was doing. Would grandma tell the exact same story as mom? Right? They were both allegedly there on the porch. I don't know if those police did any of that. So hopefully she's the one who did, because Detective Jublin, or whatever the other guy's name is, has bought the story hook, line, and sinker.
So a local and a mother, straight away, she just knows something isn't right.
Okay, that sounds good. This is promising.
I got out of the car and I just had this feeling that things weren't right. There's something wrong. William's not missing.
Well, that's a
William's
gut
not
instinct.
missing. Yeah.
Okay. So she said she doesn't believe he's missing.
That he's not missing, that you're dealing with something bigger than just a child who's wandered off.
I just kept thinking if he was missing, we'd have found him by now.
And her worst fears are right. A week passes and no one finds William. Not in the bush, not in any dams or drains. He has vanished. Police make the heartbreaking decision to tell his family to pack the car and drive home to Sydney.
We've got his bike.
His toys.
We've got his suitcase. We've got all his
Spider-Man
clothes.
toys.
We've got
little Tara.
We've got little Tara. We've got everything, but we don't have him.
Except him.
You don't have William.
And I walked inside, and I walked past his room. I had no legs. I just collapsed. We had to go back to our house, our family, without him. It was heart-wrenching. When I go into his room,
So notice how she's crying for herself, right? We had to go to the house and I had no legs and I was so sad. What about William? If she actually believes he was abducted, what about him? Why are they not speaking to the camera and saying, if you have William, please return him. We won't chase you. You can drop him off at any police station. We won't follow you. In fact, we'll pay for any tips. Are looking into the camera and saying, William, if you're out there, mommy and daddy are looking for you. We're 18 minutes into this. We're more than halfway through it. They've never once looked into camera to talk to William in case he's out there, or talk to any potential abductors, or even question what he's going through right now. Anytime she cries, it's for herself. And when I say that, I don't care if she's crying or not. I'm listening to her words. She's having a pity party for herself.
And I'd say goodnight to him. And I'd lie in his bed. And I'd cut a little Tyrrell. And I would just pray that he wasn't scared. And that he was somebody who was loving him.
I just pray he wasn't scared. So that's the first time we've had her talk about anything regarding what's going on to William. And notice how it's in the past tense. I just pray he wasn't scared. So she's accepted that William is no longer scared. This suggests to me that they know William is dead. And then what we need to dive into now, we really need to listen closely now, is to figure out which of our four theories is the most likely. Just like we did with the McCanns. We started out broad and then narrowed in. Once again, those options are foul play at grandma's and a cover-up, or a negligent accident at grandma's and a cover-up. The trip to grandma's was the cover-up, so something happened back at home, or an actual stranger abduction. And if you can't tell yet, I put these options in the order I believe things happened. I think the most likely scenario is that there was foul play at grandma's, some sort of negligence or some sort of temper tantrum from the mother or the dad, and then there was a cover-up because, they might have collapsed William's skull by hitting him or doing something to him. And I think it had to be foul play because if it was a simple accident, let's say he was climbing in a tree and fell, I'm not sure if they would feel the need to take the risk to cover that up. Because things happen to kids, accidents happen. They might have gotten the benefit of the doubt. Unless they were, I've seen comments saying that the parents were abusive to their foster children. So unless they were worried that if they did call the police to report this accident, the police would discover signs of abuse on William, in which case that would make sense to cover it up. So it could be an accident at grandma's with the cover-up because there was other sorts of foul play, right? He was being abused prior to that event, and they were trying to hide that sort of abuse. And then third, it could be possible that the trip to grandma's, the impromptu, unplanned trip 4 hours away to grandma's house, was the cover-up. In other words, something happened at the house. And it's interesting where she talks about going into William's bedroom, she collapses and cries. She might be telling us about an event that happened before the trip to grandma's, right? When they were still at the house and something happened to him there, and she's crying in his bedroom. So we need to entertain these options. Stranger abduction is still on the table, but after listening to that emergency call, that is very low on the list. I have 0 poker chips on stranger abduction at this point.
Pick him. Because it's just, she can't take him.
I don't. Well, I apologise.
right, now we have the reporter also getting emotional.
Sorry.
No, don't.
And then she laughs. So she has this crying fit, and then she giggles and says sorry. Could that be Duper's delight? Maybe, like I said, people see Duper's delight in almost every video I do, right? Whenever someone smiles nervously. In reality, the only times I've seen Duper's delight on the channel, in my opinion, are with true psychopaths. In my opinion, O.J. Simpson is a psychopath, and we've seen him display Duper's delight. Casey Anthony, in my opinion, is a psychopath, and we've seen her display Duper's delight. And Don Wells, in my opinion, is a psychopath, and we've seen him display Duper's delight. I don't know whether or not these parents are psychopaths. We'd have to watch a lot more of them. But it is interesting that she has this crying fit. The reporter starts crying, and as soon as she sees that he's buying her story and it's affecting him and he's believing everything she's saying, she laughs and says sorry. If it is Duper's delight, that is textbook Duper's delight. Right? And if you don't know what that is, Duper's delight is the rush of endorphins psychopaths get from lying and getting away with it. So every instance we've seen of it, it's when a psychopath is telling a story or telling a fabricated lie, and the interviewer starts to believe them or acknowledges that they believe their story, then the person giggles. They can't help, right? It's like a dog wagging its tail.
Well, I apologise.
Sorry.
No, don't say so.
Right, and the reason psychopaths do that is because A, psychopaths enjoy lying and getting away with it, and B, psychos do not experience emotions the same way you and I do. When they're lying, they're not nervous about it, right? They don't feel bad about it. They don't have any remorse about it. If you or I tell a lie, we feel bad about it. We also are nervous that we won't be believed. But psychopaths actually don't feel that nervousness. They don't feel that guilt. And they take full enjoyment in telling the lie, and so much enjoyment, they can't help but display it when they get away with it. So this could be Duper's delight. I'm not a clinician. I cannot diagnose her as a psychopath. But based on the comments I've seen about how they allegedly abused their other foster children, and if this is a cover-up, the boldness of the cover-up could be a sign of a psychopath.
Yes, I see. I don't know how you're doing it, quite frankly.
You have to. There's no other option.
You are so strong, though.
There's no other option. Life doesn't stop. It keeps going.
And so look at her relishing it. There's no other option. I have to keep strong. She's relishing it. And this little guy, like I said, has been failed by everybody. Even when I put him on the community poll, he lost. Because no one knows about this story, right? I think people think this is an open and shut case. If my Australian subscribers had not relentlessly commented for me to cover this, I would have written the little guy off too. And I think that's what pains me so much about this particular series, that his biological parents failed him. These foster parents failed him, may have done much worse to him. The police seem to have failed him. The media seems to have failed him. And we almost failed him on the channel. If I had just followed the headlines on this story, it would seem open and shut.
Days have become months, and months now a year, and still no William.
1 year on from his disappearance, why haven't you found William?
We're making progress, but I'd have to say that we're not comfortable with the fact that 12 months down the track and we still haven't found out what's happened to William.
Just how big is this operation?
Probably to put it in perspective, there's over 5,000 documents that have been created in regards to this investigation. We have in excess of 1,400 information reports. This is information that's come from the public.
I pointed this out in the first video, now we're seeing it again. This is the problem with this investigation. On the board, they have their little strike force Roseanne. And on the board, they have the words abducted 12 September 2014. What does that mean? That means any report they're doing, all these thousands of reports, all these leads and tips they're getting, are all filed under the presumption that he was abducted by a stranger. There is no evidence that he was abducted. So all these tips they're getting, all these red herrings they're chasing, are simply distracting from what should be staring them in the face. They have two parents who aren't even biological parents. These are just foster parents. Right? William shares no blood with them. There's no motherly instinct for him. Not even from his real parents. So they have two foster parents with a weird story, taking an unplanned trip to grandma's, a dad driving off to go allegedly do work on, I think, a Saturday, 4 hours from where he lives. Did anyone ever sit these parents down and question them separately? That's what I want to know. Or has it been this way since day one, where they had a little board on the wall with the word abducted on it to prime everybody to assume that that is what actually happened? There's no evidence of an abduction.
Something that hasn't been made public is the number of search warrants you've executed in the search for William. Can you give us more detail of that?
There's been other searches and search warrants that are executed, that have been executed that the public are not aware of.
How many people have been interviewed so far?
In excess of 1,000.
All right, so they've interviewed 1,000 people. Have they interviewed the parents? Did they interview grandma? Did they interview William's sister, who doesn't factor into the story at all? We see this all the time with these hoaxers, and I believe that these parents are hoaxers. One consistent thing among all the parents that we've analyzed on the channel, who I believe are hoaxers, they always screw up the story when it comes to the other kids who are involved. Because fabricating a fake story is very difficult, and once you start including other characters and complicated settings and complicated time, how long does it take to get from here to there? What would this person do if I did that? Once you add an extra person to a story, things get very complicated. And that's where you find plot holes. So in the McCann's case, they said they thought Madeline was abducted immediately, right? So they were conclusive, just like these parents. What did they do? They ran and looked for Madeline, but they left their twins in the bedroom where Madeline was allegedly abducted from. If you believe there was an actual kidnapping ring in the area, would you leave your other children in the bedroom where you thought your kid was abducted from? Of course not. In the Summer Wells case, they said they believed Summer was abducted from their property. What did they do? They said they sent their other sons, who are also children, out into the woods to look for her. If you actually believe your kid was abducted, there's a stranger abductor on the property, would you send your other kids out into the woods as well to potentially get abducted? Of course not. In the John Benet Ramsey case, they said they believed that John Benet was abducted, taken, kidnapped. What did they do? They sent their other son up to his room to stay in bed. Even when the ransom note said that the abductors were watching them, might still be in the house. Once again, if you believed your kid was abducted, would you send your other kid out of your sight where they could also potentially get abducted? Of course not. And then here, once again, We have parents who say they think their kid was abducted. They think William was abducted. What did they do with his sister? Did they grab her tight and take her inside and call the police? Did they leave her outside? Did they send her out looking for William? She doesn't factor into the story at all. And that's either a big plot hole because they didn't make up that part of the story, or they never considered it because the entire story of that day is made up. So we need to, what we do on the channel isn't just statement analysis. It's critical thinking, using your logic, right? Formal logic, critical thinking, statement analysis, all these things to come up with what actually happened, to see through people's words.
Is there a single person of interest?
There's not one single person of interest. There's a number of persons of interest.
One of those persons is this man, Bill Spedding. He's the local repairman.
All right. So we're 20 minutes into this. We still have lots more to go. Now we're introducing what I believe to be a red herring or a patsy similar to Christian Bruckner in the Madeleine McCann case. And that's going to be a whole other set of skills and analysis. So let's pause this here and we can pick it up in part 3. If you want a part 3, please let me know in the comments. A like and a comment is a vote for part 3. Let's try to get this video to 50,000 views. And if it does, once again, I'll prioritize it just like I did last time with part 1. Thank you to everybody who liked the video, commented on it, and watched it, especially those of you who watched it all the way through. YouTube really analyzes the view time on videos. So if you watched it all the way through, that helps YouTube push it forward and get it all those views and expose it to new people. And ideally, I want these videos exposed to people in Australia who bought the headlines about this story. So thank you to all the Aussies who subscribed after my first video. Thank you to all the new ones who subscribed after this one. Thank you for sharing and liking the video. And if you enjoyed this video, you'll love this one on your screen right now. And if you want to watch all my videos about William Tyrrell, my William Tyrrell playlist is also on your screen right now. Until next time, stay true.